Welcome to the Startup Grind.
So yes, I am Rip Emson. I'm a writer at TechCrunch. I just started a week ago. This is my first startup grind. I'm not familiar with this startup economy that you guys have here, but I'm here with Eric Koester, who, as you guys probably already know, is the co-founder of Zaarly. Zaarly, and Eric, happy to be here with you this afternoon.
Rip, you've made my day already.
This is going to be great. So I think we're gonna start off by we're gonna ask you a few softballs.
All right.
Namely, what's your favorite color, Eric?
I'm kind of a fuchsia-ish guy.
A fuchsia.
Yep.
Would not have seen that.
I know.
Just thinking you're more of a blue or green guy.
I wore purple socks for you today.
That's nice.
I did.
That is really nice. So Eric, tell me a little bit. Well, tell the people here what Zaarly is, and more importantly, I want to know how you got involved in Zaarly. We want to go back to the very beginning.
The start, huh? The start.
Genesis, if you will.
So Zaarly is it's a marketplace to help discover great local people to work with, and for those people to make money doing what they love. So if it's to find a great caterer for your wedding, it's to find a mechanic to work on your car. It's essentially the idea was how can you tap into this local economy and all of these people who are starting to make their own businesses and supercharge them. So that's essentially was the concept. It started out, literally the idea for Zaarly was we wanted to, my co-founder Bo, who is like 12 feet tall, he's a
huge man.
He is a huge man. He's also bald too. And he wanted to be able to buy someone's seat in the exit row on an airplane. And so he's like, I wanted to be able to say, like, I'll pay you $100 for your exit row seat. And that was literally his pain point, that we don't do anything like that anymore. But that was how kind of Zaarly started, was literally like a tall guy wanted to be able to buy someone's seat on an airplane from the original concept name of Zaarly was GeoBay. He originally wanted to do geography-based auctions. And that was stupid. So
that was a horrible idea. That
did not do
work.
that.
Wait, so give me a time frame here. When was this?
So this is February of 2011. So I guess just 2 years ago, basically. 2 years full.
So you guys, as I remember, launched with quite a bit of buzz.
We did.
I think Mike Arrington wrote about you in March of 2011, and you guys were fresh off a win at Startup Weekend in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Right?
We were probably we were like one of the buzziest, hypiest startups that I've seen in a while. Like it turned us into a little bit of like idiots in some ways to say but I mean, it was like the consumer internet was like it. I mean, it was 2011, you had Path and you had Clout and you had Fab just coming up and you had all of these companies that were just starting to make mobile happen, and you could see like huge numbers of downloads and all that stuff. And I think we kind of, we timed it perfectly, and for lack of a better term. But we essentially, our co-founding story started at Startup Weekend. Bo and I were on the board of Startup Weekend. Who here knows Startup Weekend? Anyone here? Who here has been to a Startup Weekend?
Good representation for Startup Weekend.
If everyone in here should go to Startup Weekend, it's like literally the best way to kind of get plugged into the ecosystem. And so, a huge fan. I'm biased. I'm on the board.
Yeah,
I've started 3 companies.
It's a little self-aggrandizing, people.
Totally.
Don't listen to him.
But we essentially came there. Bo and I went there to go hang out in LA for the weekend, and literally pitched this simple concept and started working on it over the weekend. We met our third co-founder, Ian. Literally, he was back in LA to pick up his car for the weekend. And we convinced him to work on this stupid little GeoBay project for the weekend.
And Ian is the CTO, by the way.
He's the CTO. He actually knows the code.
Did you guys have a product at that point?
No, we basically had an idea.
An MVP.
We did not have an MVP yet.
You were not.
We built an MVP over the weekend, which was like hacked together with duct tape and pipe cleaners. But we essentially, Bo had been introduced via email to Ashton Kutcher, and so we were in LA, and Bo's like, didn't even know we were going to participate. We were just going to go hang out. And Bo, a couple weeks before, was like, hey, Ashton, you should really check out Startup Weekend. The phrase was, it's going to blow your mind. And so Ashton shows up to this thing, and I was like a schoolgirl, I'll admit it. I was like, oh my God, it's the guy from the 70s show. The butterfly effect, it was so amazing. Good for you. I like that right there. Thank you.
3 out of 4 stars.
That's very good. No. And so we didn't really talk to him about our idea, though. We basically kind of built this simple prototype, and we thought it was going to be cool. It was a buyer-powered marketplace. It was a way that the buyer can go out and say what they want, and then sellers can get back to them. And Ashton dug it. I mean, he totally loved it, and he's like a product guy, and so he liked what we were doing. And we won Startup Weekend that night. This was February 20th. We won that, and then that night we get an email from him saying, like, hey, we all had full-time jobs. Like, this was a fun weekend project. And he was like, hey, have you guys thought about, like, quitting your jobs and, like, doing this? And I'll fund you guys. And like 3 days later, we like had $1 million, and we were like, "Whoa!" Like, what do we do?
Yeah, let's put this in perspective.
Yeah.
While that is an amazing, amazing start to Zaarly, not the typical.
No.
Not the typical genesis for most
No.
startups. So I
Period.
would love to hear about. Well, you call Ashton a product guy too. How much of it? He's made some great investments.
Yep.
No doubt about that. But how much of that is help? Is the good is the good team that he has around him? How much do you think that he really has an eye for these startups? And also, I mean, I'm sure people want to know what he's like as an investor.
Very handsome. Very handsome.
Extremely handsome.
Yeah.
Terrific hair.
Very handsome.
Terrific hair.
We actually got we got the package deal. So I was telling Rip this earlier. Like, we had Demi as an advisor and Ashton as an investor, and let's just say shit got
2 for
real.
1.
Like, I'm literally like perusing the blogs that you call, and like,
I'm familiar with those.
Yes, and I'm like, we're worried about like this 19-year-old, issue that we had going on, and I'm like, how did this happen to our company? But no, we were one of the first companies. I don't know that he truly like sourced the deal.
He hadn't set up his investment firm yet.
Yeah, I think I'm not.
Or just had.
Just right at that time. And so I think usually what had happened is he would come in later, but he kind of found us, and so I think for that reason he's, I think like taken us under his wing, and really like we do spend, he cares about product. Like he, spent a lot of time with our very first version and looking through it, and like really like cares about details. And it's funny, like he cares about little things that that he believes that will make people love your product. Like, it's these little tiny details. He really wanted to be able to, the wording we used around send to a friend, like he had this like particular wording that he wanted. And so like there's like, I guess I do think he's a pretty good product guy because he cares about the details, and those details wind up mattering. So he's been a really good investor for us.
And how involved has he been since then? I understand at the beginning, I'm sure he was into it, he was excited, but what was he able to sustain the interest? Has he been a good advisor for you guys? I mean, obviously with millions of Twitter followers, I mean,
Yep.
he's got an amazing
marketing
vehicle
a
behind
big
him.
funnel. Yeah, I mean, he's still very involved. So whenever he comes to San Francisco, he comes to hang out. Always wants to see our latest builds. Always, on our, he gets to see our test flights before we release anything. And so I think he's still active. And I think it's one of those things. Like, I think as his star in this ecosystem has gotten bigger. I mean, I think now he's like at 50 or 60 investments. But he seems to say, like, what he told us is that because now he's doing 3.5 Men, which essentially is the easiest job he's ever had, and so he's got more time to think through things. So he'll get random things.
Will you stop plugging Ashton's
2.5 Men. Sorry, 2.5 Men.
You're at least correctly.
Tuesdays on CBS. But he has like a lot of time to think through things. So he's very he'll just send random things at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when he's on set or whatever.
So more importantly for the entrepreneurs in the audience, is it a hindrance? Is it something that you recommend trying to go after the celebrity tech investors, or is it, I imagine that it's smart to have a balance between the two, have someone like Ashton on board and those who are bringing a different kind of value to bear on the startup. So
yeah, I'll actually
tips for
I'll throw a cautionary tale. Like, I think so. We got Ashton involved super early, right? 3 days in, we had Ashton Kutcher, and I think in some ways we got a little starry-eyed, and I think lost focus a little bit on actually really focusing on making something people love. And I think we just started running as fast as we can because there's all this momentum, enthusiasm, and we're building a marketplace which you need people to love you on the buy side and love you on the supply side. And unfortunately, what we created was a marketplace where people loved us on the demand side, but the sellers were
sellers weren't there.
Meh. They were not cool with it. And I think we made a big change in our model like just last September, 5 months ago. And because I think we probably, we literally we're just trying to keep up with this wave of enthusiasm from the tech boom and from Ashton and from investors. And I think that's the lesson I would say is don't buy into your own hype, which I think that is the cautionary tale. I think that we did buy into it. And I think we did have to kind of have that come to Jesus meeting basically about a year, last November was when we had that after about 6 months of just craziness, right? We're partying at South by Southwest and all the things that you shouldn't care about as an entrepreneur, we started believing, and we had to kind of kick ourselves in the ass and really say how do you make something people love? And I think that's the trick here is don't get caught up in how many times you're written about in TechCrunch or that stuff. You have to focus on your users, and that's the cautionary tale I would give.
Right, and it's advice that I always give to entrepreneurs. So many are focused, probably too early on, I would say, on going to blogs, on going to journalists, to try and get the word out there.
Yep.
And it seems like even if you are able to get that buzz, that launch post on TechCrunch, how did you guys deal with sustaining that early buzz? Clearly, it was a little bit of a nightmare. It was a good and bad thing, both to have Ashton on board, but to have that early buzz. And did it distract you guys from finding that, from building the product, from finding the product market fit, which I know took you guys a little while to do? It sounds like
it did. I mean, I would say that we spent a lot of time scrambling rather than basically being strategic, because we essentially launched in May. So we founded the company in February. We launched at South by Southwest, and it just kind of worked. It was kind of crazy, and then all this craziness happened, and then 60 days later we launched publicly, and everyone said you can't launch a marketplace nationwide, don't do it. And we're smart guys, we'll do it, and it worked.
Yes.
It crazily worked, but we were then spent the next 6 months scrambling. We had a team of about 45 people on Odesk in India who were helping us connect buyers and sellers. I mean, I'm serious, it was crazy. And that's kind of what you got to do as an entrepreneur when you're given this opportunity. You just have to hustle, right? And I would say that it's one of these things that, in retrospect, maybe we should have spent more time rethinking it. But I do think that we kind of just had this wave that was going, and everything felt like it was working. We just didn't make something on the supply side that people loved. We made something that people like Chesky from Airbnb says this. He's make something that 10 people fucking love versus 1,000 people thinks pretty good. And we made something that people loved on the buyer side, but on the seller side, they were it's pretty good. I'll use it. And I think that was the mistake. We didn't.
So was there a come to Jesus moment where you guys realized, listen, because I mean, everyone, in talking about product market fit, there is that, I think everyone gets that feeling that, customers just aren't coming in. The growth isn't happening.
Yep.
Was there a specific moment for you guys, or did it happen over time?
It was, our 1 year anniversary, we'll call it, at South by, just last year. So we essentially kept saying we were one feature away from our sellers loving us. Just one feature. We build this, they're gonna love us. We build this, we're gonna love it. And so we basically got to what we'd call feature complete on Zaarly 1.0, and we turned it into Zaarly 2.0 to grand pronouncement. I think you wrote about it even. And it was terrible. It was terrible writing. I couldn't even stomach it. There was a quote in there that was faked. Yeah, maybe it was Alexia who wrote it. I don't know. But we essentially at that point we were all right, cool. We're feature complete. Let's see what happens. And our sellers told us, they were yeah. It's nice. And if someone tells you it's nice or it's good, you're you've screwed up.
That's not the reaction you want to hear.
No. So we basically, you do not want people saying you want your seller community to say, I love this. This is awesome. And
I can't live without it.
I can't live without it, exactly. And we didn't get that. And that was, I think, the time where we basically bunkered down and said all right, we got one of two ways we can go. We can kind of iterate or tweak or see if we can figure this stuff out, or we can go bold. And we basically tried to go bold, and that's what we spent the next 4 months building.
So you guys swung completely in the other direction.
Yep.
And built out a whole new platform for sellers, right? You build out, for those non-familiar, build out storefronts for local sellers, right?
Yep.
And what was there a big change? I mean, obviously that changes the whole dynamic of it, but
right.
What did you guys have to do in order to ensure that that was going to be, I mean, how much testing, how much thinking went into this, Eric? That's what I want to know.
It was terrifying, right? I mean, so we had this business. I mean, we had this business that we were like growing like crazy. So we did like $50 million in transactions through the request model in their first 9 months. And like, that's kind of crazy growth, right? Like, we're like craziness. And then we're like, basically, we had to go into our board and be like, so we're having trouble monetizing this a little bit. It's working nicely. We can turn this into a nice like lead gen business, but it's not going to be eBay, right? Like that was essentially what we had to say. And so we basically kind of had to go out and kind of like put a flyer out there. And we talked to a lot of customers, our sellers. There's a woman named Mariah who like, and I would say this to entrepreneurs that are building something, like find the person who you're building your thing for, because you have to find a person that you're going to make.
Find your Mariah.
Find your Mariah. Yeah, she was this amazing woman from North Carolina. She's a baker. She's a seamstress. She's an art teacher, and she's quitting her job to now sustain herself on Zaarly because we built a product for her. And turns out that there's a lot of Mariahs out there. We found out, but that was I think it. We had to like focus on her and make something that made her love us, that she couldn't live without. And I think that was the thing that we realized is there's got to be someone who loves you.
And Eric, for those unfamiliar, give me a sense of differentiation from, let's say, the platforms that people would be familiar with, like Etsy,
Yep.
that are all about local sellers and enabling these kind of handcrafted or handmade goods.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, I think the big thing that we took a lot of inspiration from Airbnb, from Etsy, even from eBay. To be honest, like I don't know if anyone's used eBay recently, like. They've really like changed that model from the piece of shit that was like 10 years ago. So can I say that on stage? Am I in trouble for that?
Absolutely.
No? Okay.
Say it again, actually.
Shit. So we took a lot of inspiration from all of those platforms because there is something about today's entrepreneurs. Like what Airbnb does is it powers entrepreneurs who want to make money from their home, and Etsy powers entrepreneurs who are making handcrafted things. And so we took some inspiration from that and said, like, we've got to power entrepreneurs who are, maybe they're a house cleaner, or maybe they're a mechanic, or maybe they're a baker, or maybe they're a woodworker, or whatever it might be, a landscaper.
That sounds a lot like TaskRabbit, Eric.
It's different from TaskRabbit for sure. We kind of like moved away from tasks. We don't see much of that anymore. We do see a lot more.
No one asking for coffee, no one asking for data input or something like that.
That's actually our model has changed in that we picked the best 150 like hand-selected entrepreneurs that are doing.
And what are they selling? What's the most?
Yeah, so food is a really big one in terms of like personal chefs or people to bake for weddings. We see a ton of people doing, like landscaping, home repair, those kind of things. But you also see these like craftsmen coming on. Like there was a guy who literally in Seattle makes these handcrafted tables that are like $1,000, and the guy is killing it. So there is this like maker movement going on, and I think there's you can't ship everything that you want to make or do or serve. And so 80% of the things that are sold on Zaarly, that you have to actually meet up to make the thing happen. So I think that's the differentiator is like there is, it's kind of amazing, but local commerce, like local economies in the service industry is like a $4.5 trillion market. It's huge. You don't realize like how many plumbers and how many mechanics and how many, like that world is huge. And it's hard, but I think that's where what we're trying to do is like help make. Like, there's a mechanic named Angelo who is amazing. He'll come to your house and literally, like, fix your car in the driveway. Like, that's awesome. This guy works at a garage all his life, and he's like, I've always wanted to own my own business, but I can't afford enough to open a garage. So he literally now comes to your house. And I think, like, your mechanic is another business that's taking that.
Sounds a lot like it. So this is literally, it's a multitude of services. You guys aren't focusing on one particular channel.
Right.
This is for anyone, for any local business, whatever you happen to be running, this is another way to get your product out there to reach a whole new audience and consumer base. What can you give us a sense of how big is the Zaarly community now, and how has it changed recently?
Yeah, it's been amazing.
Especially with
so
we
changed, right? We launched this product originally, and it was worked everywhere, right? So we had like 20 or 30,000 service providers in our network with our kind of the Zaarly 1.0, we'll call it, and essentially what happened is we went out and hand selected 200 to 400 of the best ones in each market and built them storefronts. And so it is like a hand process where we go out, just like Airbnb, and take photos of you doing your work. We have writers that build this stuff. We've become a content company in a lot of ways. And so now we are in 5 markets. We're in San Fran, LA, New York, Seattle, and Kansas City. So we actually picked Kansas City because it's not a tech town, and to see like if this thing actually works.
Isn't that where Fishback lives?
It is where Fishback lives. My co-founder Bo, his wife is a doctor there, so a little unfair, but it works. And I think we found in this new model that we've seen like over 100% growth every month since we launched it. So we think like we found something, and now it's like pour in $1 and $2 comes out.
So what is the overall time frame? You guys have finally found the product market fit.
Yep.
You guys
I
are
think
seeing
so. Still hard. I mean, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like I think we feel like both sides of the marketplace love it. And like that's the thing. Like it used to be the buyers would say, "I love this. This is great. Someone can give me coffee," and our sellers would like, "This is fine." Now we've got people that are totally invested, and so what's amazing that we found is 80%, like kind of a fun, like amazing number, but 80% of our volume is sellers recruiting buyers to come to their storefront, which is huge, right? Like sellers are now owning their experience, and similar things have happened on Etsy too, where you're seeing like the sellers going out saying like, "Check out my storefront, buy from me, come back to me." We're seeing people who would set up the weekly farmers market stuff now taking that experience and putting it online, and so it's been, hard to get there, but I think like the big risk we took back in September feels like it's going in the right direction.
It's finally paying off. So I'm about to be given the hook, so I wanted to open it up to you guys, see if you had any questions.
Two questions. First, I do work for the Kauffman Foundation, just so
you
know.
Cool.
So I work with Bo. One is, who are your biggest competitors? Is like Thumbtack one of your main competitors? And the other one is, can I pay someone $100 to get how do I pay someone $100 to get an extra row seat? Because I still want to do that. That needs to exist because there's a market for that.
Yeah. We went away from the real-time services kind of world, and I think like there's companies that are nailing that. I think like I would say Postmates and TaskRabbit are really starting to do that, and so we've kind of said like they're doing great at that and moved away. I would put us much more into say Thumbtack is an example, Angie's List is an example. Those businesses that are focused on services is it. Our biggest competitors are probably those ones.
Eric, what kind of services, by the way, are you providing for sellers?
Me personally?
Yeah, but you.
Oh, me personally?
What are you
Back
doing
rubs,
for these people?
any kind of food, yeah.
But I mean, are you guys providing marketing services, payment?
Yep.
Payment back end. How deep are you guys going in terms of trying to make this a full service platform?
Yeah,
I mean, that's where you're seeing the differentiation between, right? Because there was a lot of hype around the TaskRabbits, the Postmates Postmate is a little bit younger.
Yeah.
When they came out, but we haven't heard as much about it. I mean,
yeah.
TaskRabbit is now 5 years old
at
least.
Yeah.
So,
it is the key thing. I mean, I think that's what we turned to is we said like our company motto. It's painted on our wall. It says we help people make money doing what they love. And like it sounds like cheesy and crazy, but like that's what we make Mariah money for doing what she loves, so that she can quit her job and bake full time and that stuff.
How many would you say of these local businesses are actually making a significant profit from you guys, or are quitting their full-time jobs?
Yeah, we got 3 emails last week from people that quit their jobs to live full-time on Zaarly. So I mean, hard to know the numbers. We're only 5 months into this, but I think like we're seeing like people making real income, and that's I think the differentiator too that we found from our old model. It was we spread ourselves so thin that like people were making little bits, but now we're seeing a concentration around the best entrepreneurs that are the best baker in San Francisco, the best craftsman in Kansas City. Like those people are making real money, and that's I think the key is like when you're building a marketplace, you've got to have people who invest in your platform and are willing to basically put their business on it. And so these people are making 50+% of their income from Zaarly. They're hooked. Like they're in.
It also seems that like the vertical helps a lot too.
Yes.
The niche. I mean, look at it, Exec, which is doing a lot of this
Yep.
too. When they launched, it was for every service.
Yep.
And they've pretty much become a cleaning service
Yeah,
at this
yep.
point.
Yep.
The Uber for maids. Any entrepreneurs out there? It's gonna kill it. But do you see one emerging for you guys? I mean, is there? Etsy seems to again have killed the handcrafted goods.
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel like you can compete with that?
I think that there's a huge opportunity for it. I mean, I do think that we're finding a lot in landscaping. We're finding a lot still, even in cleaning, I guess is one. But it does tend to be that people who are in this space, they want to show off themselves. So we find like food is a big one for us still. We do find that home services is another really big one, and so that might be cleaning your chimney all the way to, cleaning your house. Yeah, chimney sweep. Huge, huh? But yeah.
Hey, governor. Guys, we'll do two here.
Kudos, it's live. Kudos for Kansas City, not only head of the headquarters for the Kauffman Foundation, but there's a huge fiber to the home project going in there with Google. How has your business model changed over time? You talked about the product evolution, but how are you making money, and how has that changed over the last 2 years? Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess I would say like the surprising stuff is if you had to look at our pitch deck from 2 years ago, the model hasn't really changed. It was always that we wanted to charge a transaction fee on transactions. We just couldn't figure out how to get our sellers to pay us that transaction fee before. And so now we have, a lot of our transactions would go off platform, right? So we couldn't monetize those. And now, kind of to that point where we've been able to like get people locked into the platform, they pay us a 10% transaction fee on all their transactions because we help, bring them business. And we provide a lot of that support, marketing services, that, tracking services, communication. And so that's, I think, we've got people who love it, and now they're hooked. And so,
and by marketing services, do you mean that Ashton will retweet?
He will retweet the hell out of you if you want. It's all our marketing.
Sorry, we have no more time because we need to work out the next.
Sorry, guys. We blab too much.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. And,
thank you guys for listening.
Thanks to Rip.
Thank you,
Rip.
Koester.